Come viewers of the Awakening Empire, I give you chapter 1 of a new fanfic. One Helluva assassin/hero. I'm truly sorry ma'am, but your son is, quirkless. Quirkless, one word no one ever wanted to hear. And for poor Izuku Yagi, this was unfortunately the case. The ride home with his mom and sister was silent for Izuku, as he didn't speak a word, but his sister Izumi on the other hand, was very happy that she had a strong quirk. And while Inko did congratulate her, she did glance at the rear-view mirror and at Izuku, looking at him with a look of remorse. If there was anything she could do to make her son at least smile, she would do it. Of course things were much different with Toshinori, Inko's husband, who was absolutely delighted with his daughter receiving a great quirk, but when Inko told him about Izuku, he just gave her a silent look before turning back to Izumi. Things only got worse and worse when Izumi broke the news about Izuku being quirkless to their friends, the Bakugo and Todoroki twins. Of course, when Katsuki offered the idea of attacking Izuku with their quirks so that he'll be too afraid to become a hero. Needless to say, it didn't work, and the beatings only got worse. The other students even joined in, and as for the teachers, well, they encouraged it, because in their minds, the quirkless have no purpose. But, despite all of this, Izuku would not give up his dreams of becoming a hero, and that was because of his mom, who would always be there to comfort him whenever he needed it. 2. One day, however, 10 years later, would change everything. Izuku had just returned home, limping as blood dripped down his school uniform after he had received a rather violent beating, the reason for standing up to his tormentors for once. Seems like the one thing that those 5 hate more than him is him trying to act brave. Nevertheless, Izuku stumbled his way inside. Inko came over to greet her son, only to stop midway when she saw the horrible condition her son was in. Very quickly she rushed him over to the bathroom to get the first aid, and started cleaning his wounds. When she asked what had happened, Izuku was very hesitant to tell her, considering that he was threatened before not to tell anyone by his own sister, so he remained silent throughout all this time. Until now. Izuku. It was them. Inko. Who? Izuku. Izumi. And my friends, the Bakugo and Todoroki twins. Izuku then begins to break down as he explains everything to his mom about how he was beaten and tormented by the 5 of them. After all that, Inko was experiencing a mix of emotions. One was devastation for her baby boy as she hugged him, and the other was absolute anger. After she finished up bandaging his wounds, Inko took Izuku to his room and told him to try and relax, as she then stormed down into the living room where Toshi was. Inko. Frustrated Toshi. Toshinori looks up and over to his wife, who had a visible look of frustration. Toshinori. Yes dear, what's wrong? Inko. We need to have a talk with Izumi. Toshinori. Confused why? Did she do something wrong? Inko just turned back towards the stairs and yells out. Inko. Izumi Yagi. Get down here now. A few seconds later, Izumi came down the stairs, a bit nervous about why she was called down. Did they perhaps find out? Inko. Do you want to explain what you and your friends have been doing for the past 10 years? What you've been keeping from us? What you've been doing to Izuku? Izumi tensed up a bit as she felt very hesitant to tell the truth. Izumi. Well. When my friends found out Izuku was quirkless, Katsuki suggested we beat him up using our quirks. We thought it could stop him from wanting to become a hero, so he wouldn't get hurt, or worse, killed. Everything stood still and quiet throughout the household, until smack. The sound of a loud smack resonated throughout the house, as Izumi fell on the ground, with a bright red handprint on her cheek. Toshi stared on in shock at Inko, who stood there with an angered look in her eyes. Toshinori. Inko. What the hell? Inko. I cannot believe that you would go along with that, Izumi. Even if you were 4 years old, you still should have been smart enough to know that wasn't going to have a good effect on him. Toshinori. Inko, listen to me. I understand that what they did was wrong, but they did it to protect Izuku. Inko. Protect him. You call bullying and tormenting someone for years on end protecting. Inko was clearly and understandably angry. What she did next was something she wanted to do for quite some time, but never could do. She took off the ring, throwing it to Toshinori. Inko. Toshi. I'm done. Toshinori looked at his wife in shock, unsure if he heard her right. Toshinori. What? Inko. I said I'm done. All those times you neglected Izuku. Points to Izumi and all those times you have bullied your own brother. I just can't ignore it anymore. I want you both out. You hear me? Get out. Inko then forcefully shoved Izumi and Toshinori out of the house, and then slammed the door. Inko then turned around, and saw Izuku had seen the whole thing. Instinctively, she went over to her son, and hugged him tightly, tears forming in her eyes. Izuku stood motionless for a second, before hugging his mother back, and tearing up as well. Was this the end? Was this the end of the 10-year-long neglect and abuse? Unfortunately. No, it was not. In fact, this event was about to bring something very bad for our young protagonist. During school the next day, Izuku hadn't really told Inko about what the school staff did. Since he was threatened by the principal to keep his mouth shut, Izuku was walking through the halls, ignoring the stares he was getting from everyone else. Then he heard someone stomping up to him from behind, but before he could see who it was, a hard blow to the head knocked him out cold. When he regained his vision, he looked around and noticed that he was on the school's rooftop, and in front of him were his 4 tormentors, including Izumi, who had rage-filled eyes directed towards him. The group didn't even say a word as they began to beat him up mercilessly. Getting burned, cut, having objects thrown against his head, and having his eardrums completely destroyed by the point-blank explosions. This was by far the most brutal beating he had received from the 5, and he felt like he was going to lose consciousness. Then Izumi kicked her brother down hard, as blood left his mouth. Then she kept him pinned down with her hands tightly pressed down on his neck. Izumi. God damn it, you stupid, useless fucking deku. Because of you, Mom threw me and Dad out of the house. It's all your fault. Izumi yelled as she punched Izuku's face in several times, before stopping, and then lifting him back on his feet, as she spat in his face, before turning to Katsuki, giving him a nod, which he smirked at before walking over to the bloodied and beaten Izuku, preparing a powerful explosion. Katsuki. Die. The explosion was large, easily enveloping Izuku's entire body, burning him greatly and sending him flying off the roof, and down onto the concrete below. After everything settled down, the group then walked over to the edge and looked down. Shoto. Well. At least he's out of the picture. Katsumi. Yeah, good riddance too. They all then walked away, as Izumi was still staring down. She was having a mixed feeling. She was glad that she and the others taught Deku a lesson, but on the other hand, knocking him off the roof. She was worried that would come back to haunt her. Then Katsuki walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. Katsuki. Come on, let's go before we get in trouble for skipping class. Izumi just nodded her head and went along with the others, just as a strange glowing circle formed underneath Izuku's battered, lifeless corpse. Izuku groaned a bit as he sat up. It took him a little bit to remember what had happened, until he finally did. Izuku. My God. They did it. They actually killed me. Why? What did I do to deserve this? Those goddamn monsters. And they have the audacity to call themselves heroes. After all the shit they did to me, and what they did now. Izuku stood up, his mind filled with nothing but anger and rage towards his tormentors. When he finds a way back, he was going to make them all pay. But, looking around, Izuku had a bit of problem. Izuku? Wait. Where the hell am I? Little did our protagonist realize was that he just answered his own question. Though it certainly didn't look like it, he was in the underworld itself. Hell,